One of the things I mentioned yesterday, this conference we put together is safety and grain quality, right? And so what did I think what I mentioned was, in 2009 was a wet harvest, right? And what happened after that, 2010 was the highest number of engulfments and entrapments that's been recorded. And there was a lot of high-profile fatalities that occurred. And after those high-profile fatalities that occurred, that's when OSHA increased their enforcement upon the industry. So as you can see, it's gone down, but it's creeping back up again. And even though 70 to 80% of these occur on farm, not within the commercial industry, OSHA doesn't have jurisdiction over farms unless they have over 10 employees. They have jurisdiction over commercial facilities. And because of that, that's why OSHA has local emphasis programs for the grain handling industry in regions 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. And these have all been, this is all at the beginning of the fiscal year. So because of that, this means that grain handling facilities are part of OSHA's programmed inspections. So if they're not at a facility investigating an employee complaint or a fatality, more than likely they'll be coming out because you're on their programmed inspection list. And if you look at the data here, as far as their inspection statistics, this is up through fiscal year 15, at the end of fiscal year 15 last year, look at the percentage of these that are programmed inspections. Almost over half, on average half, as you can see here, around half of this are programmed inspections. Now, the total violations issued at facilities has gone down. However, one of the things that OSHA has done to make up for that is repeat violations. And with repeat violations, I'm assuming you all have had to deal with repeat violations where they could issue a citation at one of your facilities, and this could be the facility in the same state or even a different state, even a state plan state. They could have issue a citation for, say, housekeeping at your facility in Iowa, I'm sorry, here in Nebraska, and then they could issue the same citation at a facility in Kansas 6 months later. And if it's the same citation, they could get you as a repeat violation and double the penalty. And that's what they've been doing quite a bit within the industry. This was put together by Brian Grimm. Thank you. You get the credit for this. I know you were using this as far as the safety seminars that we're working on putting together. But this is OSHA's data from about a year. It's from 2014 to 2015. And these are the top citations issued by the agency. And as you can see, going through from the grain handling standard, all the way through the wiring, powered industrial trucks, guarding, ladders, confined spaces. It goes into housekeeping, electrical, preventive maintenance, and so forth. If you go through all of these citations issued, 4 of the top 20 is electrical. These are the citations that OSHA has issued out of the facilities. This just gives you a general idea. So, as far as the top issues that we're still dealing with within the industry, I'm just going to go through a couple. And for the time constraint, I'm not going to get too much into DOL overtime rules. But obviously, I think the increase in the penalties and the electronic reporting are 2 of the biggest issues out there right now that are going to be impacting the industry. And essentially what happened is this is final. Final rule was published July 1st, last month. What essentially happened is, I don't know if you recall when Speaker of the House, John Boehner, when he stepped down, and we have a new Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, currently. Who knows what's going to happen with everything going on politically. I think Speaker Boehner said that he wanted to clean house, or clear the barn, so to speak, so when Speaker Ryan took over, he wouldn't have some issues that he'd have to deal with, right? So this Bipartisan Budget Act in 2015, this quickly negotiated budget act so the government wouldn't shut down, had language in there raising OSHA's penalties. And it's a lot of people within the city, those within the safety, health, environment community, where everyone, when they saw this, was kind of scratching their heads like, how did this happen? How did this sneak in there? How did this was one of those things that I guess why Donald Trump is so popular now about how things happen in Washington. This just kind of snuck in there, and no one was really aware or that it was happening. But essentially what it is OSHA's penalties haven't been increased since 1990. And what they did is they made the adjustments based on the Consumer Price Index, right? So from 1990 to 2015, and as a result, the penalties they have increased up to 80%. So now, basically, what used to be the maximum violation of 7,000 for an other than serious or serious is now almost 12,500. Okay. Same thing with the repeat. The repeat, as I mentioned, that's been a common practice within the agency. The repeat's now going from 70,000 to almost 125,000. And the willful violation, it's going to be going. The minimum was 5,000. Now it's up to almost 9,000, and similar to the repeat, it's going to be going. The maximum is going up from 70 to 125. So it's out there, and as I think Doug and Eric were emphasizing yesterday, this is something to watch out for when the agency comes out to visit you and they issue their citations and you have your informal conference. So this also applies, will take effect, any of the citations issued by OSHA after August 1. You know, there's usually the 6-month time frame. So if OSHA comes out to your facility, does the inspection, they have 6 months before they can issue the citation. So think about that. So if they have any violations occurred after November, right, and they come out to your facility tomorrow and they give you your citations, it's going to be based on these new increased penalties. So that's something to be aware. I think the number that OSHA put in the Federal Register, I think the guesstimate is based on the number of citations issued and the penalties paid. I think they're anticipating $150 million increase in the amount of penalties that are paid. Now, this money, as you know, the fees, the penalties that you pay to OSHA, they don't go directly to the agency, right? These go to the General Treasury Fund. So it's not like you're paying a user fee to OSHA by paying the penalty. So, but they still anticipate the government's going to be receiving an additional $150 million based on the increase in penalties. So, FYI. Any questions? Jess, violations that occurred after November 2nd, right?
6 months.
Yeah. That's what that's when it went into it was published, Federal Register July 1, goes into effect August 1. It's January.
Right.
It's the timeline. It's in the Federal Register notice, that's when they had, it's a direct, as they call it, a direct final rule. So this is language coming from the Federal Register notice itself. It says anything after November 2nd, but they were anticipating I guess you could say when it's the language that's in the Bipartisan Budget Act.
Okay.
So when they went through the process of publishing the direct final rule, these are the dates that they included in it. So it's saying within the rule itself, it says November 2nd. But when they published the rule, it's a direct final rule. So, you know, it's not open for it's not open for stakeholder comments. Does that make sense? It is after November 2nd. So if it published in July 1, right, that's when it was published in the Federal Register notice saying this is going to be going into effect on this date. But anything that occurred after November 2nd, it is eligible for these new penalties. I understand what you're saying about the date. It would be January.
And that's what I'm figuring in my head, thinking, wow.
No, they're stating, what this is saying is anything in November. So if you had an inspection in November, they delivered your, and I guess it's for OSHA and for other agencies with DOL too. Yeah. Public notified of. When the public found out about it, I would say within DC, we didn't find out about it until after it happened, right? So we found out about it last year, right? As far as the information that OSHA has done to make it public, I don't think that they've really done that much. So I know, they have it online if you go to the OSHA webpage, but I don't know, do you have any subscriptions to any? How many of this is the first time you've heard of it? I know we've tried to do, from the NGFA perspective, I know we've worked with Grain Journal and we've put out an article. I know we've put information that we've sent out to the members of our Safety, Health, Environmental Committee. I think we had information on our newsletter too about this, on our webpage. We've tried to get the information out. I know our state affiliates have also worked on trying to get the information out too. And there's a lot, and I'm talking a lot like some of the larger trade groups and those just within the safety, health, environmental community. I don't think didn't see this coming. We're not aware. And so this was something, as we said, after we kind of did some digging and looked into it, it was a very political issue. It was the former Speaker of the House making the transition to the new Speaker of the House wanted to make sure that the new Speaker didn't have a lot of baggage. And so one of this was a compromise that was made to keep the government running and to start from scratch. As far as the electronic record keeping, how many of you are aware of the new record keeping requirements? Okay. So the new record keeping requirements, how many of you have facilities with over 20 employees? Okay. So if you have facilities with over 20 employees, you're going to have to be submitting your 300 log to OSHA on an annual basis. Okay? So this means you're going to have to, what their OSHA is going to be doing, this is part of OSHA's data mining project. What they want is they want data. And they're going to be getting data from individual facilities. So what you fill out on the 300 log, they're now going to have that information. And it's going to be publicly available. And so what they're in the process of doing right now is obviously how are you going to be submitting that? It'll be the website, which I don't think they've completely finished. They're still working on that, but you would go online on the OSHA webpage, and for each facility within your company that has over 20 employees, and this includes seasonal, temp, part-time, anybody that would put you over that 20 employee limit, you would have to go online and fill out the form. And then anybody could go online and have access to that data. You have, I mean, if your company has a total of 20, but say at a facility you have 5, well, it's by facility. So it's not company total, it's by facility total. So you could have a total of 500 employees, say 10 facilities, but out of those 10 facilities, only 5 of those facilities have over 20 employees. It would just be those 5 facilities that would have to submit the data to OSHA. Does that make sense? Yes, when I checked, when I called OSHA, I said, would a grain handling facility, would that be a facility? A grain handling, would that count? Grain elevator, processing, feed mill, that a grain handling facility, all of those, that would count as employers. So but it's a facility. So it's the employee. It's the individual facility, not the company, right? So if you're a company, right, you could have, like I said, as a company, you could have 500 employees, 250 employees, whatever the number is, but an individual facility, right? So if you have 10 facilities, and out of that, 5 of those facilities would be over 20 employees, or, primarily 20. Within this industry, I don't think there are many facilities with over 250 employees. But those 5 facilities could include headquarters, right? So you could have your headquarters, your administrative office that would have over 20 employees. They would have to submit. No, the individual facilities, the individual grain elevators. And if one of those individual facilities is the headquarters, that building itself, that structure, that facility would submit. If it's under 20, you still have your paper copy that you're going to have to make available internally, right? But what you submit to OSHA. So it used to be before with the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they would send you randomly send out a survey to a facility, correct? You'd receive a random survey from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You would fill that out and they would post that information online. Now what's going on is OSHA wants individual data from each facility. So if your facility is under 20, you would not have to submit it online. However, you would still have to do the 300 log internally and make it available, right? If you're over 20, include seasonal, temp, everything, anything that would put you over that 20. And as you know, that could be one day that they work with you if that puts you over 20. Even get into I know with the time we're kind of running short, but I didn't even get into the effective dates. This has actually changed. There's as far as which you have to make your employers aware of as far as the discrimination. You remember what Doug and Eric were talking about, OSHA's discrimination policies? Well, this is, the date was August 10th, and that was extended now until November, but there's also, you have to make the employee aware of their rights to report an injury, right? So basically, employers have to be made aware that you're not going to be discriminating against them if something were to occur because they didn't properly report an incident. So for example, an incident occurs, an employee reports about it a week later, and you're saying, well, wait a minute. You reported it a week later, you knew something bad was going to happen, you didn't do anything to prevent an incident from occurring. If you were the employer to have some type of 3 strikes and you're out policy and the employee could be disciplined because of that, you're going to have to make the employee aware of what could potentially happen to them, right? And according to OSHA, as it says here, prohibition from discharging or otherwise discriminating against employees for reporting work-related injuries or illnesses. I mean, that's by individual state. This is from a federal level here. I mean, this is what OSHA's requirements are. You're going to have to provide, the date was extended, it was recently extended, it was about 2 weeks ago. They extended the date, but you're going to have to be providing the employees. Let me go back. So the final rule allows OSHA to issue citations to employers for retaliating against employees for reporting work-related injuries and illnesses, right? So basically the example is disciplining employers who report injuries late or disciplining for violations of vague work rules such as work carefully or maintain situational awareness. So potentially if somehow, as I described that situation, right, where an employee reports something late and they, according to your safety, according to the policy that you have at your facility, if or company, and if OSHA may find, however the worker was disciplined, that you have written on their record, yeah, I wish I could, as far as with the labor unions, I don't know, that's I would check with your counsel on that. I don't have an answer for that as far as, with the, yeah, I'm not exactly sure about that. But that's a good question. I mean, that would be good to find out, and maybe I'll call Eric when I get back and see what his thoughts are on that. But basically what this is saying is that, if there's something, what if an employee makes a complaint, right? An employee reports an incident that occurred, they're disciplined according to the safety and health policy that your company has. They don't like what happened as part of the discipline. They call OSHA and make a complaint about this, saying, well, look what happened to me. I reported this incident and they don't think I did it the right way. According to this new record-keeping rule, OSHA could come out and do an inspection and to make a determination if you were violated the employee's rights. Yeah, and every company has its own policy, right? And as Jim was saying too, I mean, you could have agreements too, collective bargaining agreements with the union. So that's why, as far as, how you deal with the employees, and obviously like Doug and Eric were talking about yesterday too. I think the important part is to be made aware of this, what these new requirements are under the rule and the impact that it can have. And as far as modifications that you might make to your policies, obviously that's something that's internal and something you'd have to check with your outside counsel or general counsel. And once again, that also depends on any type of labor agreements that you may have. So basically, as far as the submitting the requirements, it says establishments with greater than 20 but less than 250, you need to submit the information from the 2016, right? For calendar year 2016, you need to submit it by, it's going to be July of 2017. Okay? And this is an individual facility. So whether that be a grain elevator, feed mill, processing, headquarters, that's going to be, that individual facility is going to need to go, you're going to be going online when it's available, still not available yet, to submit the data that you would put in the 300 log. Okay? And we're going to be, from the NGFA standpoint, obviously from here, you know, our committee, our Safety, Health, Environmental Quality Committee, we're meeting today. Obviously, this is an issue that's going to be a topic of discussion as far as, you know, potential guidance documents. I mean, we're going to be obviously trying to make information available to our members on, you know, what these requirements are. But just want to make you aware. So real quick here, walking working surfaces. OSHA's been working on a walking working surfaces proposed rule for quite some time. The big issue for our industry is rolling stock fall protection. The concern has been that when OSHA comes out with this new rule, subpart D, that they may put requirements in there for rolling stock. I've heard, talking with leadership, that they don't plan to have any changes involving rolling stock fall protection. The 1996 miles memo will still be in place. Now, is OSHA still going to be honoring that? Currently, they've been ignoring that, and they've still been issuing citations for people that are on top of rail cars without fall protection. According to OSHA, you need to do a proper hazard analysis. But from what I've heard, I don't think they're going to be putting any requirements in the walking working surfaces proposed rule. But that should also be coming out, from what I've heard, sometime this fall. Yeah, and I know they had, it'll be interesting to see what comes out of this. They've been working on revising subpart D for 30 years. And they had two different versions. They had one version that they submitted and then they withdrew, and then they started up with this again. And you know, this is the one where they wanted to make combustible dust a slip, trip, and fall hazard. So, yeah.
Wow.
So, the one big thing too, you know, I know the questions are, there's an election coming up, right? I think you're pretty much aware. It'll be the Clinton administration or the Trump administration or the Johnson administration, or the, you know, who knows what's going to be happening with this election. But I think what's going to be happening is if there is a change within, if there is, say, if Hillary Clinton does get elected, everyone's like, what does that mean for OSHA? What does that mean for DOL? What could happen is you could have a lot of people that are currently working at OSHA stay there, right? They could be reappointed. Or you could have people that are maybe at deputy level be appointed at the higher level. So that's a possibility. Another possibility is if you have a Trump administration, Department of Labor and OSHA may not be really at the top of the priority list. And it could take quite some time for some of the people to be appointed to run the agency. So as they say, you'll have the patients running the asylum. You'll have a lot of the career staff there. So what does that mean for our industry? Probably not a whole lot of change for what's currently happening for, could be another 2 years. Another year. By the time they get a new OSHA administrator in there, it could take 6 months. And then after that, it could take another 6 months to get settled in and come up with the policies. And then you have a short window there that they have from a rulemaking standpoint too. So that's just an FYI. That's, even with this election, even with the potential changes, it could take some time for some changes to come through at OSHA.